Townhomes have no better value than the building.
You can say no.
Nobody else got out decided. I don't know. I know what you told me you were going to do before.
Are they going to widen?
Oh, it's great shape. How are you?
It's a short agenda. I'm going to guess long.
They call it for you at OLA.
I'm hoping for short, but
You didn't get that much there.
Okay, so that calls.
We'll talk.
You got rains. That's me. What's up, bro? How are you? See you this weekend, huh? Should be a big one.
Hey, man, how you doing? You in town Friday?
I had one
Are you out of town? Talk to me.
fireman saying,
Oh, God, it is the taste. Okay, well, Friday won't work.
that's not exactly how you put it, but what he was saying is that's what he wants.
You might trap it in for that tire bowling. So I didn't know if you were going to be available on Friday.
How are you? One thing they're asking for is a variance on density. If I remember, it was like they needed
Look up Joe Babbage over there.
Sounds good.
Chance.
Good deal.
Because
Good
people
deal.
came in. It was beyond 4 people came in.
That's right.
Got out of there at 5.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Let's go look. Barry was at the Rialto meeting.
Now, what do we have, 7?
Mentioned Alden or someplace. Alden died, the daughter, one was here, so I don't know where she decided.
Alden is nice, because my dad was there for rehab, just for a month, strictly rehab. They have different different levels where you can go, and that's the top. It's strictly rehab, it's not nursing home stuff.
Evergreen?
They're,
You heard anything about Joe Babbage? How you think?
I haven't talked to her since Saturday.
They had a stroke, I
Do
guess.
we win?
Yes.
Back to the speech.
so he had this brain bleed that
right, John?
sent him from his fall and on the Coumadin.
No, please don't.
Then, do you think?
What's the guy's name? Told me. He was up to see him a week ago Sunday.
Yeah, right.
So we lost?
To go with it, because I heard all.
We only lost.
Says OLA.
She wants to go to LA if it's closer for her. Alden's out in Sherwood, but it's a really nice
But
place.
did he have a stroke?
No. No,
Brain bleed.
yes.
And
I'd like to welcome everybody to the City of Joliet
affected, I guess,
City Council Pre-Council Meeting, June 20th.
paralysis. Right?
Mayor Odekirk presiding.
we'll begin with roll call. Mayor Odekirk.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Here.
Councilman Girl.
Here.
Councilman Hug.
Here.
Councilman McFarland.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Here?
Councilman Turk.
Here.
Mayor.
Yeah, I would like to announce, the council's just gotten a copy of this. We had the decision come down Friday. The United States Court of Appeals has affirmed the trial court on all issues regarding Evergreen Terrace. So we do believe, at this point, this will be the end of litigation. There is, of course, the option for the owners to appeal to the United States Supreme Court. However, the legal counsel we've had, as well as HUD, seems to indicate that this is not a case the U.S. Supreme Court would hear under any circumstances, as they have recently heard a case similar to this. So, Jim, if you want to take it from there, but I think the litigation is essentially done here.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. We've provided council with a copy of the decision that just came out this morning. And it does mention that we have 14 days to request reimbursement of our legal costs for this appeal, not the entire case, but for the appeal, which will exceed over $100,000. The city attorney will handle the closing of the property, which is tentatively set for August 1st, and then we would immediately transfer our ownership over to the LLC that we've formed with Holston Real Estate Group. One of the things that we need to decide in the meantime during this next month, and as you know, we have $3.3 million that we have that HUD owes us of CDBG money that they've allowed us to use towards the purchase of the property, and that we have applied for that. And so council needs to decide if they are going to add the cost of litigation towards the ultimate note that gets established. In other words, what is the LLC going to owe us? Are we going to add that cost of litigation? And so that's something we'll have more details on as our attorneys have discussions with HUD and we move towards that closing date.
Any questions? Yes.
Jim, you indicated we have 14 days to make a decision of whether or not to go after the legal bills. Is that something staff's recommending we do, or?
Yes, definitely. In the situation, and I'm only talking about the time from when the decision came out and they filed the appeal. We're talking about the litigation costs for the appeal.
So probably the correct statement is that the city will be going after the...
It is an allowable expense, so we should get reimbursed. We just have to file how much that is and show the court the details of those expenditures.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
We did have a request to move the discussion for licenses and permit applications before the presentations this evening.
City Council, Mayor. This is Council Member 28916. A public hearing was held on Wednesday, May 4th at 9 a.m. for a new Class D license. The requesting location is 1536 Illinois Route 59, Coffee Holding Inc., DBA Starbucks 8918. The resident manager will be Trinity Gamez. No one appeared in opposition. Police and Fire Department have no opposition as well. No monies are owed to the city. Based on the facts and the facts of the hearing, the Liquor Commission recommend approval of this license. Council Member 29016. A public hearing was held on Wednesday, May 4th at 9:30 a.m. for a new Class D license. The requesting location is 2410 West Jefferson Street, OM Joliet Wings, DBA Wingstop. The resident manager will be Christina Schultes. No one appeared in opposition. Police, Fire, and Building Department have no opposition. No monies are owed to the city. And based on the facts and the facts of the hearing, the recommended approval of this license.
Any questions?
Does that mean I can get a shot of Hennessy with my mocha?
Apparently.
Actually, no, because it's just beer and wine.
Just beer and wine. Okay.
Thank you.
One question. How many liquor licenses will that bring? These are 2 new liquor licenses, right?
Yes, it would be.
How many does that bring our total to in the city? Can you get that for us for the meeting?
I don't know if...
Roughly, that would, if I'm not mistaken, I believe about 212 in the city.
Thank you.
Next is a presentation by Deputy City Manager Steve Jones and City Manager Jim Hock on the consideration of expansion of existing downtown special service area.
Thank you. Let me start off by telling you a little bit about the history of the downtown special service area. It was originally formed in 1980, and and special service area is defined as contiguous properties where a special tax is levied. Now, this August, the existing SSA in the downtown is set to expire. So it has to be renewed yet this calendar year, or there won't be any taxing authority on the tax bills for 2016 going into the 2017 tax bill. So the City Center Partnership is an incorporated body that the cities entered into an agreement with to assist in the guidance on the use and expenditures of the funds of the special tax in the downtown. And recently, as you know, we partnered with the City Center Partnership to select and hire a planning consultant firm of Camiros, and over several months, Camiros representatives met with various stakeholders in the, including city council members and downtown members, including the City Center Partnership, and they worked to coalesce the ideas and interests and vision of the city council and the business community for our downtown in the future. So both groups then met to discuss priorities, and the city council adopted the list and the downtown plan. Although there are these priorities, it doesn't mean that they're independent. Rather, it's the opposite, that they're interdependent and can be achieved simultaneously. So let me bring you up to speed on some of these priorities that you've established. The Chicago Street design and installation of streetscape improvements. We have employed an engineering firm for Phase 1 engineering of Chicago Street going through, and the holdup has been the fact that Jefferson Street Bridge has been up. So now that it is down before Cass Street goes up in 2 weeks, we're having traffic counts down there, and that will be utilized by our engineers to determine timing of a street light, whether a right-hand turn is needed, what is the waiting lane for that right-hand turn, and so forth. Now, concurrently, we've gotten a CMAP grant for $50,000 in federal funding, which for a while was held up but is now available. And city planner has been in discussions with CMAP, and the grant will only pay for the street design and streetscape design. It will not do the plaza. But we are in agreement that it makes sense to have the same person, the same firm, do the Van Buren Plaza design concurrent with the Chicago Street redesign. So we'll have input into that selection process right up to the awarding of the grant. CMAP said that they will have the RFP out within the next 2 weeks. So that's moving forward as well. We are also looking at the extension of the life of the downtown TIF district. That requires a lot of gathering of data on property values because what you're doing is resetting the value of the property to today's numbers versus when it was first established, because the TIF gains its income on the difference between the old value when it was first started and today. And with the 2008 real estate crash, some properties went up, some went down. We've recovered better in some areas than other, but we're taking a look at those numbers right now as well. Mr. Jones is working with Laz again actively on the off-street parking, on-street parking, and the operations of our parking garages, and that can move forward fairly soon. I have been meeting with some of the social service agencies in town on our homelessness and vagrancy issue about the possibility of having a daytime drop-in center. Now, this came to mind as I visited the Victory Center, which we own for the first time, and we've need to put over $100,000 in roof repairs there. There's no water and sewer there. Those any improvements are CDBG eligible or other grant eligibility if that's ultimately what we want to do. But we are moving. The big thing is that I've gotten a lot of groups to the table to understand that there is a problem during the daytime and it's just not overnight, and it affects our downtown. So we are moving forward there. And as you know, I think I mentioned in a recent report to you that a couple weeks ago we met with White architects who are designing the and building the courthouse here for the county, and discussed the traffic flow and water and sewer lines and where they are and the sizes and so forth to assist them in that design. So again, Steve Jones and I want to share an idea with you to expand the existing area and include some of the commercial and industrial properties to the east and north along our main corridors. Steve?
Thank you, Jim. We're going to show you a map in a bit, but what I'm going to do first is show you some of the program ideas that we had sort of gleaned from the downtown plan priorities, plus chatting with people in terms of what are the needs of downtown, what are the needs of the general area. It's sort of funny, there's an awful lot of overlap here, but if we look at how new monies would be spent, lo and behold, Chicago Street design and installation. In addition to what we know is being considered right now for the actual parking lot from the county, we also have Chicago Street that goes all the way up to the north end of the special service area. Obviously, at some point in time, if we do encourage some decent amounts of redevelopment and start to turn that stretch of roadway into the entertainment district as called for within the downtown plan, you don't just do a block, you basically do the whole length of Chicago Street. if there was some dedicated funding, that could be earmarked for design and the implementation, because clearly that's where the big bucks get spent. Van Buren Plaza, I won't belabor that point, the city manager's already covered it. CDBG Section 108. Council recalls several meetings ago, we did a little bit of a reorganization with our CDBG funds to get the money up front and to potentially come up with some economic development programs. SSA money could be put together with that for some matching grants for business in any of the eligible corridors. So it would be a way to, kind of multiply the effect of some additional revenue specifically for economic development. Artificial turf at Silver Cross Field. After the announcement of us having another 5-year contract with the IHSA, and with some of the earlier discussions about potential for turf, clearly that's something that could happen, but it would have to be a result of an expansion of the SSA, because the ball field currently isn't in the downtown SSA. Entryways. We've talked a lot about entryways within the city itself. We've talked about Larkin Avenue and some of the first impressions people get when they enter Joliet. But think of our downtown. Our downtown also has entryways. And I think if we consider Cass, Collins, some of the areas immediately outside of our downtown, if we were to get some significant redevelopment, some significant improvements within the physical look of our downtown, and do nothing for those fringe areas, in effect, will we be as successful as we potentially can? So we've talked about creating entryways into downtown, and we'll see that on the map in a little bit. We already talked a little bit about the parking, but smart meters on street parking certainly would make it a lot easier for our residents and business owners. How many times have you heard about people complaining about not being able to find their way around downtown? Where's the parking? How do I get to restaurants? Obviously, if folks live here and know the area, they know how to navigate the one-way streets. But with our significant focus upon creating a more lively downtown, getting people to the Rialto quicker, trying to get some of that tourism, business growth downtown, we need to make it easier for people who aren't familiar with Joliet to find their way around. So we've talked about the possibility at some point of engaging IDOT and perhaps some sign professionals and look at everything downtown. It's not just a question of green signs pointing in a certain direction, almost coming up with a signage plan that you'd find in a tourist town, so it's totally simplified. We don't have to worry about people getting lost. Maintenance expenses regarding installation, repair of brick pavers, tree grades, street trees, furniture, etc. Anyone who walks through the downtown sees some of the wear and tear that's happened with regard to overall streetscape. City manager is in the process of working on some of the green tiles and some of the aesthetic improvements, but it takes a lot of time and effort, and it's an ongoing, sustainable revenue source that will really guarantee that this gets done to the fullest and it continues. Right now, we don't have any dedicated funding for that. Public art. We have sculpture, we have murals, we have any number of things that were done in downtown Joliet. Some of the, let's say, the days when we were a little bit more flush with cash. It's starting to show its age, and obviously, if we intend our downtown to have that funky atmosphere, that inviting feel, public art's one way to do it, particularly if the art's starting to peel off of walls. And new parking. We've talked about the potential at some point of success leading to additional need for acquisition, for parking lots, et cetera. Obviously, there's no dedicated source for that. Maintenance of public spaces. We've started our power washing, our gum removal for the season. We do it a square at a time. And once again, to get to the level of sustaining this so that we have a downtown that's attractive and inviting, it really needs to be more than something that just occurs on occasion early in the spring when you've got summer kids. And then lastly, economic development marketing of properties. In the past, we had a lot of economic development work done downtown by City Center Partnership. Some of their funds have been cut. My role and the city role, we're spreading ourselves between downtown and the rest of the city. So probably today, there's a little bit less marketing of downtown properties just because there's more territory that's being covered within the economic development program. So obviously, if we do want economic development and marketing to ramp up within the downtown, it will take a little bit additional revenues. So we're going to show you the area we're talking about. And in your packet is a map that shows the existing SSA. And the existing SSA pretty much is bordered by the river, the two railroads to the south and the railroad to the east, along with the little point where Ruby Street meets up. So in effect, this is the area that is the current SSA. The other areas that are adjacent, we talked about those entryways into our downtown. We have industrial properties to the north of our downtown, basically between what we think of as downtown and the prison. And we wouldn't envision the prison as being part of the SSA. We have Collins Street, a very vibrant corridor at the present time, which also intersects and has a less vibrant corridor of Cass Street. So in effect, we have two areas that people utilize enter downtown that could potentially benefit from some redevelopment. We also have the area, just kind of a mix of uses around the ballpark, immediately east of our downtown. And then we have a spattering of commercial that extends from downtown down Chicago Street, basically to Interstate 80. So that's the approximate area that we're looking at. It's all contiguous. It's an extension of downtown. You know, these aren't separate business communities that sort of thrive on their own. I think it's all fed one way or another because of our downtown area. Now, to do an SSA, it's a fairly lengthy process. And in your packets, I gave you a little bit of the worst-case scenario with regard to when we should get this started. But if we were to do an SSA, renew our SSA, expand it, keep it the same, do whatever, and expect revenues to come in 2017, we have a drop-dead date of having the council propose via ordinance an SSA by September 20th. And the reason we say drop-dead date is that there's a 60-day waiting period after the public hearing. And the public hearing would have to happen on April 18th, and the council would have to actually approve an ordinance approving the SSA, adopting the SSA by December 20th, which then allows us to go to the county clerk's office, file it, and it gets levied on the property taxes. So,
Steve, did you mean September 18th?
September 20th, the deadline for council, October 18th, public
Okay, because you said
hearing.
April 18th, and it
Oh, I'm
threw me out
sorry.
for a second. Yes.
Excuse me. Thank you for correcting
All right,
that.
so October
And then
18th.
December 20th, the adoption. We could start this earlier. I mean, obviously, we intend to start talking to some of the stakeholders, chamber, city center partnership, business groups, before that time. And if we do get through, summertime's usually tough for people in scheduling, but we're going to try to make it happen. If we can get stakeholders involved, we could potentially bring something back to council before that September 20th drop-dead date. So this is what we're looking at. That list that we had certainly isn't mutually exclusive to what we've talked about. We may find things from the stakeholders that say, you know, it'd be great if the city did blank. And obviously, those type of suggestions are something that they would feel would be important. And if it's something that we could utilize SSA funds for in a successful SSA, certainly we would be looking to do that to assist them. So either of us can answer any questions.
One of the things I want to mention, though, is part of our strategic plan was to develop an economic development plan for the east side of Joliet. And so I think this helps facilitate engagement of the communities along Cass and Collins Street and move our economic development from strictly right downtown and show how they can complement each other in some of the activities that we can coordinate between those two areas and meet our strategic plan goal.
Mayor?
Yes.
Steve, is there any way, you're talking about people that are coming in and make it easier for them to get around downtown. Now, does there have to be traffic studies, or do we have any say in maybe turning these one-way streets back into two-way streets again, especially when the bridges are down or up? It just creates havoc all the time.
Since the roadways that really are affecting the bridge traffic are IDOT, there's nothing the city could do independent of IDOT. But when we say comprehensive, the idea is to literally start the discussion, get an engineer who knows what they're doing, knows what the goal is, get an open-minded IDOT who's, theoretically, if they're willing to listen, then we go through a process. I get it. IDOT's concern is to get traffic from point A to point B. There just happens to be a downtown in the middle of that. So, in effect, I think the goals of the city are different from IDOT. I bike to work once a week, and the most dangerous part of my trip is between here and the bike trail. And, it's one of those things where I notice just, the downtown atmosphere is something that's not 45 miles an hour with cars kind of racing between stoplights. We're trying to create something that's more pedestrian friendly, something that people travel through relatively slowly so they could see what's here. We're not a 4-lane highway that's, Route 59 or Route 30. And to get IDOT to sort of see that a little bit, see if there's some compromises, see if signage could handle traffic calming, any number of things. Don't know if they'll ever go for the two-way streets, but.
Well, my point I was trying to make is back when these were made one-way streets, downtown was a hustling, bustling shopping, courthouse, business area. And today it's changed, because that was back, the early 60s that was changed? I'm not sure. So things have changed now, and we don't have as much traffic as we had back then. We'd like to have that traffic again, but, it's just something maybe that they could consider. It's not what it was 50 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. It's different.
If we don't ask the questions and make an attempt, then the status quo prevails. So I think the
Right.
key is, if this is something that folks feel is important and we do get into an SSA situation, that could potentially fund those type of studies, improvements, implementation.
So it's not out of the question to ask the question.
You can't get the answer unless you ask the question.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Just a couple things, Steve. Sounds like you got a pretty aggressive timeline here. You're talking about bringing it back to City Council, you said in September?
We would have to have the council put an ordinance on proposing the SSA by September 20th.
Okay. And then how do you plan on reaching out, I guess? You got a lot of stakeholders in the downtown area, and now you're expanding it. How do you plan on reaching out to all those stakeholders? Because that's kind of key to the success of this is our stakeholders, our partners in downtown, in the city center. Do you plan on, I assume, working through the city center partnership, the Chamber of Commerce, setting up meetings regularly, I assume?
We've already reached out to a number of those different groups to tell them this proposal was going to be tonight and share that with you and talk about the process and ask them when it's convenient to attend their next board meeting so we can engage them and share this information and give them time to think about it and give us feedback as well. Now, again, you set up in September the public hearing date, which is another 60 days later. So even if we can't get to some groups because of the summer activities, we'll have September, October, and even part of November to talk to people before you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to expand the SSA.
I'll add to that if there are folks who know nothing at all about this, they just kind of miss the fact that there are meetings floating around. When that public hearing date is established, we're required to also send written notice of that public hearing notice to every property owner. So in effect, they will get something in the mail before that public hearing. So one way or another, everybody will know what's going on.
Just one last thing, Mayor. I know that a few months ago, we talked about a medical TIF over by the President's St. Joe's Hospital. How's that coming along? I know it was well-received here with the mayor and the council. I believe it was well-received within, you know, the, as far as at the hospital administration, at the hospital. Where are we at on that? Are we moving forward with that?
After the council gave the thumbs up with regard to moving forward, we had SB Friedman, who's the consultant, look at it. They came up with a couple issues. They said, you know, we think it will be eligible. You know, we're not going to spend a lot of money for you. We want to tell you we think it'll be eligible, but there are some residential properties that are needed to get the property contiguous. Hamas had to be contiguous with the...
Hamas?
Hamas,
Okay.
thank you. Tell them not a local.
It's okay.
So in effect, we tried to find a way where we could avoid the residential, stick with commercial office. So Kendall Jackson, SB Friedman, and I made a visit to the leadership board about a month ago. And we did a presentation, and we said, what if the hospital came in? Now, why don't we think about that? It was a question that had never been raised before. So we got a pretty positive reception at the leadership board. They then took it and chatted with their internal folks. And about a week and a half ago, we received word that they gave us the thumbs up. So in effect, our consultant right now is drawing up the maps and proceeding with the eligibility on the hospital itself, avoiding the residential.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the update.
Questions?
I've got three. First one, I don't know who wants to answer this. On this SSA downtown with the expansion of the geographic area, are we looking at, and you've got a short list here of ideas that staff's come up with, and again, we're going to go out and seek input from those that be impacted. Is there, when we do the levy, is there a set dollar amount that we would levy or a certain rate?
The city council would decide what that rate is. At present, it's 95 cents for the existing downtown property owners.
Okay. So if we added additional, you guys would then base back on that rate? I mean, right now, if you expand it, I guess it'd go higher than 95, or would it go lower since you're bringing in more properties?
See, the rate is established, and then it applies to all the AV. So what you'd be doing is raising the EAV by bringing in new properties. And then whether you keep the rate at 95 or lower it becomes a council decision as to what this thing would generate. Right now, the SSA brings in about 400,000, 403, somewhere in that general area. If each of the properties along these various corridors were to come in at the same rate, it would probably bring in another 230, 250,000. So in effect, it's a question of keep the rate the same, you lower it, you do something that kind of meshes the needs that were on these various lists and come up with a budget. So, you know, that's to be determined. That's part of that whole process of having our chit-chats and bringing it back for public hearing to discuss.
I think that's what the folks are going to want to have an idea of what the rate's going to be. Second thing is, Councilwoman Quillen brought this up just a second ago. I wanted to piggyback on it. As we voted for Phase 1 for the opening of downtown, one of the questions that was brought to me afterwards is the truck traffic. Right now, the truck traffic's directed Scott Street, then over Ruby Street Bridge. Would there be a way, if we open this up, to limit the weights and the types of vehicles that would be going down Chicago Street?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, Chicago Street, I'll defer to the Public Works Director.
I'm saying once we open up Chicago Street,
Yes.
can we then restrict the concrete trucks, the semis and all that to continue on Scott Street instead of coming through?
Yeah, the plan is they have Chicago Street be, for local vehicles and not a non-truck route, basically. The trucks will still they'll follow the state configuration, which is Illinois 53, northbound Scott Street, southbound Ottawa.
Okay. And then the last question is, Jim, when you started your conversation on this, you mentioned that the city of Joliet owns the Joliet Victory Center, the assisted living facility across the water?
Yeah, and what I'm talking about is the gymnasium portion there.
So the city owns that?
We still own that, yes.
And
Yeah.
is it leased to the current?
It's vacant. It's empty right now. And there's cinder block walls cutting it off. So the lower level is a former cafeteria, a big room, and then 2 classroom sizes. And the second floor is a gymnasium. It's got a wood floor, basketball court.
The gym area, yes, it was a mess.
I didn't know we had that asset.
We do.
So part of this is, are you saying immediately we need to look in terms of funding a new roof?
No, because there's no immediate use of the property. But sometime in the future, we need to look at it, yes. But it's far better to have an intended use when you go to fix a property than it is.
No, I
just
agree.
to
I'm just a little
fix it.
perplexed that we own the building. I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody up here knows that we own that.
I think there was an option to buy the senior center at one time that it has expired. And they've never expressed interest.
Thank you.
Mayor? Yes. I had a question. There's been, Steve, you brought it up. There's been a lot of people that have suggested or very preliminarily proposed usage of CDBG money. First, let me clarify. The CDBG 108 loan program, that essentially is taking a loan out on future CDBG money. We receive a loan with some level of low interest on the loan from HUD, and then we pay it back in future years from the grants they give us. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay.
Up to 5 years.
Okay. So, it's been brought up for Evergreen Terrace, it's been brought up for other projects, now it's being brought up possibly as a component to this project. And I'm thinking at this point, you can only spend the same dollar once, unless you're Enron. And with that said, I think we need to start looking at a comprehensive report on what everybody from every department wants to use the CDBG money and the CDBG, which is still CDBG money, but the 108 loan program, because I'm getting a feeling that we're spending that same dollar 2 or 3 times. And when all of these projects come to fruition and they were preliminarily dependent on a portion of CDBG money, we might find out, we're giving $3.3 million of our back pay from the HUD is going to Evergreen Terrace, so that's off the table, if the council so votes. But it seems like we're dreaming over the same dollar for a number of different projects, and we only get, what is it, Alfredo, $900,000 a year on average? Right. So it looks like we're spending that same dollar in a lot of different directions. So I think at this point, it's time to formalize some kind of an estimate or preliminary proposal of what we're going to do with CDBG money based on a benchmark of $900,000. So that way we're not going to get to where we're like, wow, this project needed $450,000, this one needed $300,000, this one needed $200,000. We're at $1.1 million. Where does the other $200,000 come from? Do we kill that project? Do we cut back on this project? We need to get ahead of that curve and not wait and be reactive to a shortfall. If we've learned anything from the train station, if you have an opportunity, get ahead of the shortfalls if you can see them coming.
That's a good idea. The Section 108 program is strictly for economic development, and that economic development has to be in those eligible areas designated by HUD, and it's just an option, if we want to use the money that way. And it can be in the form of loans, it can be or a forgivable loan or after a period of years. It's just a tool that HUD offered to us to make available, and if we never use it, we never use it. But it's still a good idea, as you said, Councilman Hug, to get our head around a longer-term plan on what we're going to do with our CDBG funds.
Well, because the frequency of it being mentioned for so many different, if you will, wish list
You can't spend it
projects.
one place and then say, where is it, when you...
Right. You can only spend a
Had
single
it
dollar, the
someplace
same
else.
dollar once, and I want to get ahead of that. And then something particular when we talk about the gateways. Now, probably one of our biggest gateways, or I should say with the biggest volume of traffic, is I-55 onto Route 30, maybe second behind 80 and 30. Would that awfully ugly, abandoned, dilapidated, dangerous building that's still sitting there, the truck stop, would that be covered under this program? Of condemning it and taking ownership of it as a city? And we need to do something about that entrance. It looks horrible.
I've had chats with the individual who is, he's not the owner, he's sort of the broker. I think he's doing this as a favor to the property owner. They have plans of starting perhaps some planning, some utility work after the Route 30 construction is done. I've had some chats with him about prospective retailers up there, and before the ICSC show, he and I chatted a little bit. They're not looking at this being indefinite. They're not trying to avoid the issue. They are going after a few anchors on the Plainfield side of the line. And obviously having Joliet and Plainfield sharing a parcel that's under single ownership and the construction, it's made things a little more difficult and complicated. IDOT apparently is leasing it right now for material storage or for something relating to their construction activities. But don't look at this as a black hole. It's gonna happen.
Well, just so you weren't here, Steve, historically, this was first brought up in 2011. And at the time, we were still, coming out of the great collapse. And that's exactly, if I remember right, it may have even been Alfredo. Remember Alfredo, the conversation we had back then? And we gave him a little leeway because he said he needed to get some capital up as far as tearing down the building. Well, it's been 5 years. And I wish them well, and we'll help in any way we can. And our economic development director, our economic development committee, the mayor, the city manager, to attract businesses. But whether it takes 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years for them to develop that property, we can't have that building sitting there. It's a dangerous building for kids to get inside. 5 years is long enough. We need to have that addressed. I mean, that's one of our 3 major entranceways. I don't have a traffic study, but I'm going to take an educated guess that the volume of traffic that looks at Joliet as it goes down 55 at 30 and sees this old, ugly, graffiti-painted, falling down truck stop is going to make a judgment on what kind of community they think Joliet is. So then the only other question I had was, Jim, we will do that then? Put together, just a general preliminary, identify all. There's been a number of different projects where they've said, somebody from some department has said, and we could use CDBG. We need to quantify that. At some point we can say, well, we've already spent more than we're going to take in, so let's not hear we need CDBG money for another project from another department because we don't have it. I don't want to see us false starts.
We haven't had the plan in a long time because HUD was holding it.
True. And then the other thing I would say too is, you're right, that this expansion of the TIF district, it also addresses I don't know how many years ago it was, but they did the Quality of Life, District 4, District 5 Quality of Life program. And the expansion of this TIF could address some of the goals that were set out even back then, as well as developing a East Side specific, East Side corridor economic development plan. But as we've said all along, I think just for the public's edification, it is the economic development director with the economic development committee and the city manager to try to put together a process to do a comprehensive citywide economic development plan, with each piece in there, so we can address it citywide. There's some real big needs along the narrow east side as well as the narrow west side, and then there's some out there in our district that were neglected over the years for commercial development. So just to clarify, we're also looking not just to put together one section of the city, but to put together a comprehensive economic plan. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Next is a presentation on information technology survey results by the interim IT director, Sam Ferguson.
As you know, Sam Ferguson was hired by the city through Baycor, who's implementing our Tyler Munis system. He's a retired chief information officer of Schaumburg, and one of the first things we had him do was, before we go out and hire another chief information officer, was to do an internal assessment on the departments and the perception of the other department's needs. So, Sam?
Council and Mayor, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. Just want to, I'm not going to try to bore you to death with 100 different PowerPoints, but I do have 8 quick ones that I'm going to go over that Councilwoman Quillman thought should be brought to you all when we had our CTIS meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe it was.
Yes.
But as the manager said, I was brought in to do an IT assessment upon your former CIO leaving, to take a look and kind of get a bellwether on services, and then also to do a end-user customer satisfaction survey. And I believe I also helped a little bit in doing some interviewing for your new person coming on board eventually. I typically do an assessment based on 4 major components of an IT organization. The infrastructure, that's That's the things that make the data go around, your lines, your cable, what have you. Business applications, those things like Microsoft Office and those applications that are used in the various departments. The IT staffing, what those staffing levels are, who's doing what types of jobs to make all your data work for you. And then the processes. And those may be processes of how you handle addressing in a city, or how you handle IT service requests, and then how those things are accomplished, and the coordination and the coordination and the cooperation that goes on in those processes. The methodology I used was just talking with folks, interviews of staff, and then a customer satisfaction survey, which I'll talk just a little bit more about here in a second. In the interviews, I interviewed all the IT staff, the city manager's office, and the department heads, and went around to each of them and talked about what they thought were the needs of the city, where IT may be falling down, where IT was doing well. And the key findings are those things that I've got there for you. And this isn't me making this stuff up. This is what I was told, so I'm just feeding it back to you. More help is needed. The help desk ticket system not customer focused. Better communication needed between IT and the customers. GIS and asset tracking needed as applications within the city. And then a general lack of end user training and some governance around some of those processes. The IT assessment survey that was done, we're fortunate here in the city where y'all have a subscription to a company called Infotech. Infotech is a research firm, and they do these, and as part of the subscription, we just use the online tool that they had available to us. Sent all the city employees the questionnaire. 266 or 30% responded, which is a pretty good response rate. They compared Joliet to 23 other municipalities, and the results were that, with one exception, Joliet needs to improve on all of the categories measured, and those categories are business enablement, how technology helps you do your business, IT communications, applications, and IT services, and especially service desk and overall customer service was needing improvement.
What was the one exception?
The one exception was that while folks had problems, they appreciated it when IT was there. They liked to see IT coming because they thought something was going to get done. Now, did IT get it done as quick as they'd like? No, but they liked to see them coming. They believed in the professionalism and the things that were getting done when they could get done. Infrastructure, and what do we find there, and what did I find in my research and talking with IT staff? The wide area network needs to be upgraded. In the city, and I use the analogy, for Councilwoman Quillman and the group at CTIS, the data paths that you all have is just like your water and sewer. And if those things start to back up, you've got messes. And it's no different with data. You're operating on a 9 to 10-year-old radio frequency wide area network through antenna towers and shooting the data amongst your multiple locations in the city. And again, just like water and sewer, those things need some care and feeding from time to time, and that wide area network needs that care and feeding fairly soon. There's a couple of key server upgrades that need to be done, and again, in the report that you'll be getting after this, you'll see that there's some more detail there. The business applications, public safety application, and that's not that the public safety applications are in need, it's just that the IT does not have a real good handle on what all those are. The portfolio management of those applications is not well documented. So I really couldn't see what was there or what wasn't there. I know they're there because I know the chiefs are using applications every day. IT just does not have a handle on it, so they can help them better with their applications. The ERP Munis, which some of you probably all heard about at one time or another because it's a big project for the city, needs to continue, and the AS400 eventually retired and decommissioned. And that project is still going on, but needs to continue. Asset management software is something that can, again, greatly benefit the city and was spoken about in a number of the interviews that I had. Staffing, and this is, you know, that's, I've been in municipal government for a long time, and anytime you start talking about staff, it gets attention, but it's also, it's a problem area. And we have, city has 5 full-time and 7 contract employees. And there is new staff recommended, and the report does outline what I recommend as far as some of those staff members being brought to speed. And I'll talk about here in just a minute what the city has continued to do. And recall, this assessment was done in January. So the city IT and the city departments are not sitting on their hands. There's been a lot done, and there's been a lot done over these past 5 months. The business processes, as I mentioned, an example being the IT ticket process, those processes need to be identified and enhanced, and some governance put around them. I mentioned the addressing and GIS. Again, nobody really knew who owned addressing when I started talking about it. And again, this is a positive because now those things are being worked on and and there's some governance put around it.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Mayor. What would you, for a city our size and our needs, what kind of staffing levels would you recommend?
Well,
Adequately staffed.
I think and again, it can be done with a combination of full-time and contractual, but I think you need to be, I can give you an example. At Schaumburg, town quite a bit smaller in years, about 80,000, 70,000, I had 26 staff, but I also had a call center. And so my call center, 301 call center, had 12 to 14 of those staff members.
Okay.
So I had, aside from that, then another 12 to 14 who were full-time IT staff. So to answer your question, I would think it would be in somewhere in the neighborhood of that 15 to 20.
Okay.
And again, I think it could be a combination.
All right,
You're supporting 900 internal employees. You're covering over 40-some buildings, I believe, and 64 square miles as a city. You guys are big.
You said 15 to 20 ballpark,
Folks, yes, sir.
and it could be full-time as / consultant.
Yes, sir.
So currently, we're at 12 between full-time and consultant.
Yes, sir.
So you're talking about 5 to 8 more.
I would say so, yes, sir. And again, it'll be up to the new CIO and management to determine what, I've made some recommendations, but what would be that proper mix? Because I do believe there's a place for both. The general recommendations, and again, there's more detail in the report that'll be provided to you. Hire the new CIO, that's on track. Hire some additional staff, which I've outlined. Update and revise the ticketing system, which again is being done as we speak. That's happening. Document, process, and review other processes, such as what's happened with GIS, maybe some onboarding, termination of procedures, some of those things involving other departments. Because if you understand it, IT does not just involve the computer. We touch every department, and we can help every department. Audit applications and compile that portfolio for public safety just so IT knows how they can better help public safety. Evaluate the staff and contractors. And when I talk about evaluate staff and contractors, I'm talking about in their performance and how they're doing for you as a city. Understand the strategic direction of the city and how IT plays in that. Train staff and employees on the tools in use, and develop policies and procedures to conduct business. So what has been done since I looked at these things for you all in January? The help desk service has been addressed to some degree, and it is getting better. I think there needs to be a dedicated person there that really takes care of it. This current staff is trying to do that. staffing on those key positions that I mentioned, that we talked about. Right now, they're being staffed by contractual folks, but when I identified a database administrator, they're doing that. When we had some data input people, they've gotten those people. I identified some help by just a administrative assistant for them to do the things that high-paid folks were doing when they really could have been done by somebody else. And so that person has been brought in on a part-time basis. So staffing positions have been addressed to a good degree by contract folks, not to the degree of 15 to 20, but at least another 3 or 4 that have been added as contractual. All within confines of a already approved expenditure through contractual services for professional IT services. The communication teams and the website process was another one of those that I found there really wasn't any governance around. Now there is. Those folks have gotten together through Steve's leadership and Krista's leadership and put together people working on the website. Some of the infrastructure improvements have occurred. There are fiber process pieces in place and are continuing. There's a 400 megabit bandwidth subnet going from here over to the transportation center that wasn't there 3 weeks ago, a month ago. The ERP, the Munis project continues with utility billing going live later this summer. And there's a definite plan for all those infrastructure pieces that I identified, and to include the decommissioning of the AS400, which then gets you all off of the older technology. So the city hasn't been sitting on its hands since I looked at this stuff in January. Things have progressed and are progressing quite nicely, but I do want to make sure you understand that the infrastructure of a municipality is like a foundation of a house. You got to have a good foundation or your house isn't going to stand. Similarly, if your infrastructure, and especially your wide area network, isn't solid, the data's not going to stand very well. Or it's going to stand here and here and here, but it won't all communicate because things will start to fall apart. So be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions, comments?
Quick question,
Yes, sir.
with all your years of service up in Schaumburg it was, right?
Schaumburg and Palatine and
Okay.
the Army.
Now, we have quite a bit, or, we have a considerable amount of capital improvements, or infrastructure, we have software, hardware. Under Homeland Security, federal government, state government, are there grants out there? I would think that they might be increased with cybersecurity being such a hot topic. Are those available to municipalities?
Yes, they are, and I'd encourage you to look. Now, it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack sometimes, but they are available, and they can be researched and applied for. I can't. I'd have to look at it for you, but again, they are out there.
Something we might want to consider. I'm thinking, it's never called free money, but it's money not in our budget now that would come from somebody else's budget. How's that?
And I can say that a number of the fiber initiatives that are already happening, some of those aren't going to be totally funded by the city.
Are there outside agencies that do that kind of research?
Yes, sir.
That specialize in it? Not that you
In
couldn't.
fact, I would start with the subscription you already have with Infotech, because they could probably look into it for you fairly quickly.
Sounds good to me. I'm not sure who Infotech is, but,
Well, that's the subscription service
Okay.
that I use to help do the survey.
all right, great. Now, Jim, I think it's something to consider.
notes.
All right. The only other thing I would say is I'm going to congratulate the council for being very patient, unanimously voting, if I remember right, it was unanimous, not to bring in the asset management program that was presented to us from the Water and Sewer Department, because it just struck me with you up here, and this is the first time I've met you. I've gotten a chance to meet you because you're busy in the salt mines. We've had civil engineers, we've had mechanical engineers from the sewer department talking about asset management. Shouldn't it be headed by a computer engineer? Somebody in IT, our new IT director, whoever they is, should bring we talked about buy-in. Councilman McFarland was big on all the departments into the buy-in on our GIS asset management. That should really be emanating from your department. Wouldn't you agree? And reaching out to the others?
One of the things that I've spoken with Councilman Quillen about, and in general to staff, what is beginning to happen here, and I think the ERP and the addressing and GIS, asset management's the same thing. Where there used to be a lot of individual departmental think, there's a lot more Joliet city think now. And that is very positive to have that city think going on as opposed to the IT department, the Public Works department. If we think as a group and have that group think, be it about asset management, be it about addressing, you get a lot more input from the right people at the right time, and the technology just kind of ties it together. But I don't disagree with you that sometimes it takes an IT change agent to help folks see how all that can benefit everybody else, because you know, IT only exists for the departments and you all to get what you need out of that information. Without you, IT doesn't need to be here. You know, they are a service providing organization, and that's what they should be doing for you. That's what they should be doing for these departments. And if they're not, they're wrong and they shouldn't be here. So if they're doing that, they're bringing these things to light, like asset management, like some of the and you do this in, you know, the chief may hear about one thing or another from a technology standpoint, and he bounces that off IT, and if it works functionally for the chief, all IT is say, well, okay, how can I make that work for him? Because functionally it needs to work for him. His IT's job is to find ways to say yes and make it work within the confines of the infrastructure and the technology that they have.
Councilwoman?
Yeah, we had asked our committee, Sam, to come up here and explain everything to answer all your questions, and I think he did a fantastic job in keeping it short and to the point. And one of our concerns on our committee also was to make it user-friendly for citizens, not only when they call here, but also to use the website, because the website's still pretty confusing. It's easy for IT people that are very techy, but the average person that's, you know, some of our senior citizens are using the computer, it's still very hard to find something that they need to find. So those were two of our things, but I think we've come a long way, and it is a team, as Sam has said, and so instead of everybody doing their own thing, everybody will know what everybody's doing, and so I thank you for the presentation and keeping it short.
I hope I kept it short enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have citizens to be heard on agenda items. Is there anyone that would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, we'll pass it over to the city manager.
Turning your attention to the agenda, first item is 287, where we've got authorization for 2 positions of entry-level patrol officer. These are due to 2 pending retirements. Next item, 292. Tomorrow will be a public hearing for annexation of 7.6 acres at the southeast corner of Briggs and Rosalind Drive. The classification would be I-1 or light industrial zoning as part of the annexation agreement. This is fairly straightforward. The property owner is looking for access to water and sewer to make the property marketable and for future sale of the property. Next item, 294, is Center Point Phase 5 minor subdivision located on Route 6 at Terminal Court. This is the old Caterpillar property on the south side of Route 6. I believe it goes all the way down to the river, close to it. Anyways, Center Point bought some of the properties on the other side of the river, and the existing zoning is general industrial, and there's current proposal for Lot 1, which is almost 31 acres, Lot 2, which is 2.6, and we're anticipating some kind of wheeled storage facility there. Item 295 is declaring certain properties in the city as public nuisances. 6 different properties in the city. Again, we declare these public nuisances oftentimes just to gain, some are ready to be torn down and demolished, and others are just to get their attention finally to get compliance and get them to bring it up to code. So. 297 is a resolution requesting authorization to enter into the 2016 Justice Assistance Grant. This is an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Joliet and Will County. We're eligible for a total of $56,296, which will be shared equally between the two agencies. Will County has already adopted their resolution, and this is required again to be eligible for this federal grant. Police Department's elected to dedicate the expenditure to a crisis negotiation team vehicle, which will be climate controlled and equipped with tables, chairs, and specialized negotiation equipment. Item 298 is a development agreement for city-owned property located at 1 East Cass Street, otherwise known as Crabagales. This agreement is similar in nature to the agreement that we had once before with a potential developer that never happened. The difference is that this potential developer, this agreement, goes one step further. As you know, originally, the property could be developed with the restaurant on the first floor, and nothing would have to be done on the second or third floor, or could be done unless they sprinkled the entire property and put an elevator in there. This developer's come in saying that's his intention. We've given him a special use permit for 2 apartment units on the second floor and 6 on the third floor. So construction does have to include an elevator and sprinkling the entire parcel. The second floor of the Chicago-facing property will be a banquet room or a small party room, special events room, which will be serviced by the restaurant in the lower level. Like the other agreement, the purchase price is $300,000, which can be 100% offset by the building renovation credits that are made available to them. Any questions about this particular one? And let me tie back to one of our development goals that we just reviewed, and that is having more residential development in our downtown area. Again, this building will have 8 units for residents in it. There's talk by Mr. Bays, First Midwest, is renovating the Turk furniture building there. He's thinking about future residential on the upper floors there. I know there's been a new listing of the old hardware building downtown, and there's been some interest in that as well. So. 299 is getting rid of surplus property. This time, a little bit different is we've got a number of Scott air masks from the fire department. And, you know, I asked the question that, and what we're doing here is we are passing on a lot of these to other fire districts or, you know, other communities. And I said, well, you know, how come they're interested in it? And we're getting rid of them. And they are out of warranty as far as our use, but they're still newer than what these villages and small rural communities have, so they're more than happy to take them. Then the bids and contracts will be reviewed by Public Services Committee tomorrow. There is one memo I do want to point out to you is number 305, and that is a emergency expenditure that I authorized because we're in the middle of a demolition, and they ran into much more asbestos than they realized. And whenever a contract amendment exceeds 50% of the original bid, we're supposed to go out to bid again. But in this case, you've got asbestos that's exposed right then. And so I authorize, and they did, as part of the contract, have asbestos removal as part of it, so I authorized the additional expenditure to get rid of all of it. Any questions about the agenda? If there are none, I've got a request for closed session.
First, we have public comments. Christopher Pedersen.
I don't think it's on.
Statesman, I have B. Pro, Christopher Person, 702 Vine Street, Joliet. So, to this distinguished body of councilmen and councilwomen, I want to address full council, legal counsel, and Chief City Manager James Hock in the direction of the great city of Joliet, City of Chambers, Crossroads, State of Illinois. In the middle of our great city, that I feel should be presented to an officer that rightly deserves. I feel the medal of our great city should be presented to an all-American hero icon that rightly deserves if I have council approval for our administration.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak under public comment?
Krista, I have an issue regarding the Rialto. If I can give an update to the council and the public on where we're at with the Rialto. I have been meeting on a regular basis with Dan Vera, as well as a couple private citizens, Terry Darcy and Jim Rolfe, who are obviously are a big part of our community and have taken an interest as business owners to get involved with the Rialto. So if I can give the council an update where things are at. As was reported last week, the Rialto board has made the decision to go to an outside vendor, to a third-party vendor to come in and run the theater. They have just issued requests for qualifications, which they, of course, are required to do. And they put those out, so I'll be curious to see what comes back. They've already had a couple vendors come to their meetings and give proposals. Without being detailed, some of what I've seen, I'm very impressed by. They have vendors who are successful, are running theaters currently, some in the area, who are talking about legitimately bringing 200 shows a year into the Rialto Theater. And you could do the math. If it's 2,000 people a show times 200 shows, that'd be 400,000 people coming into our downtown area. So in my meetings with Mr. Vera and some of the board members, I've communicated that I think if this was done, that the city council would be 100% behind that initiative. And some of the controversy that's been on the council in the past regarding the funding would probably go away if we saw that type of return on our investment. So I'm glad it took, I think, a little while for the board to get there. There was a lot of talk about hiring a general manager. I think it's a smart move that they moved past that. They're now considering some of these professional vendors that want to come in. It also appears, after the meeting we had today, that the Rialto board is poised to sell the office building located in Chicago and Clinton. They indicated that there is a buyer, a potential buyer in place. They've done appraisals, and there may be a tentative agreement on a purchase price. I'm not sure about that. The idea behind selling that would be to get out of the real estate market, but more importantly, to infuse the theater with the cash that it needs right now to keep operating, because they are facing a deficit. As we know on the council, we bailed them out of the last 3 shows and kept the theater running. So I would expect to hear an announcement on that, hopefully in the future. Finally, the meeting that we had today, and one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up, Jim Hock, when we first met with Dan Vera back in March and their attorneys, and it was uncovered that, or Mr. Vera came forward and told us about the issues with the taxes not being paid and the actual financial state of the Rialto Theater. We put some conditions down on Mr. Vera and the board saying if you want the city of Joliet support going forward, you have to do these things. There had been resistance on the board towards doing any of the things that we had asked them to do. I am happy to say today that Mr. Vera indicated in our meeting that the Rialto would be open to some type of financial investigation or financial audit conducted by the city. Now, Jim, I'm not sure exactly what the scope of that is, and I know, of course, Jim Rolfe is here. Maybe he can elaborate. But I think this is a step forward on the theater. We've really made it clear if they expect any funding from the city in the future, they're going to have to open their books and come clean as to what happened here. This council needs to know, and the public needs to know. Joliet taxpayers have spent over $15 million funding the theater over the last 30 years. So I'm glad to see that they're finally, there's some movement in that area. Having said that, I know you said before, we can't afford to send our financial director, Mr. Gadati, there for the next 2 months to go through these records. Do you have any ideas of a way we can do this in-house? Would you want to hire someone to come in and do this? Or I know I haven't had a chance to talk to you prior to the meeting.
Right. We did have in place a financial group that was, that the Rialto board was in favor, they knew who they were and were in favor of them coming in. And I think it was the Inspector General condition that they were wary of. So I can pull out the agreement. We had a tentative agreement and it just kind of fell apart. But I can resurrect that and reach out to that group again and talk to Mr. Vera and see if they're agreeable to that firm.
Okay. So it's an update. If there's any questions or comments, but I want to let everyone know where things stand right now. Yes?
Quickly, Mayor, because Jim Hock brought up a good point. So is Mr. Vera amicable to allowing our Inspector General to be part of the process?
No, that was part of the conversation. The request was that we start with the financial audit or financial investigation and see where that takes us, and then they would address the Inspector General.
Now, if I remember, Jim, this goes back several months, they did have a firm that they had approached, the board. Didn't that firm say they weren't interested? That we never moved forward anyways, remember? They kind of said we weren't interested, we're too busy.
No, that was originally the auditing firm, and they were in the middle of tax season. And so, no, this was another firm. It was local. And then when Rialto said they weren't interested, I just notified them at that time that it wouldn't be moving forward. So
We voted that agreement down, didn't we? Came to the city
because
council,
the
voted
condition
down.
included the Inspector General.
So the city council voted it down to not let the city inspector general go in there? Is that? That's
No,
what I
no,
recall,
no.
right?
It was to authorize the contract and have the Inspector General go in there.
Right.
That agreement went to the Rialto. The Rialto didn't.
Well, we voted on it first.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
And it had the inspector general going in.
Yeah.
It had if we needed it, had a financial consultant.
And I
going as
believe,
well.
and I believe
And
you
the council here
approved
voted
that.
that down.
Their board voted that down.
Their board never voted on it.
Yes, they did.
No, they didn't. We voted on it.
you're
and
right.
voted it down.
There's
We
an
voted it.
intergovernmental agreement that we
Well-
voted down.
Right,
That did
yeah.
not get passed here.
It was an intergovernmental agreement that we voted down, which was to allow the inspector general to go in and use a financial consultant if needed, correct? Or am I missing
No,
something?
I think you're right.
I think you're right, and what they're saying today is the part of the financial audit, financial investigation, they're willing to agree with and move forward. I don't want to mischaracterize it, they're not saying, or Mr. Vera wasn't saying no to the Inspector General. He also wasn't saying yes. He wanted to start with the first part and see where that took us.
Well, Mayor, doesn't it put us back to where we were when we did vote it down? I know myself and several of the folks up here, when we voted it down, several of us had different reasons. The reason we voted it down is they were willing to accept an auditing firm if they could choose it, but they wouldn't let our Inspector General in. I don't know why we would vote any differently if they're not going to allow our Inspector General to be part of that from the get-go.
Well, the two things I would add, to Mr. Vera, there's things that, without speculating, there's things that an Inspector General investigation may uncover that aren't going to be uncovered by an auditing firm. It's more than just matching up two columns of numbers and seeing if they match up. But having said that, I do think the theater's making progress towards a solution. I believe they're going to need the city's help if there is going to be a solution. So I think, again, it's a small step, but it's a step forward that they're including the city back in the process, trying to build confidence with the city that they're operating above board and that there isn't anything to hide there. I don't believe at all that this will be all that we need to see, but again, I think it's a step forward, and that's why I'm bringing it forward to the council.
Mayor,
Yes.
you and I were at, they were supposed to vote on the Inspector General. And we waited and waited and waited, but they decided not to even vote on it because it wasn't, when they came out of closed session, they didn't think it was the best thing for the theater. Is that not correct?
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I thought they voted it down.
My understanding was that they did not vote on it because we voted it down, so there wasn't an agreement to forward them.
I don't think, they didn't publicly take a formal vote. I don't know what was said in
No,
executive
I don't
session.
either. I don't either. But that's what, anyway, it was back and forth. But what happened to the Wormer Rogers audit that they had done? Did anybody ever see that?
Yes, they did, about a week after that vote. The audit was completed and presented to their finance committee and their board.
But have we looked at it at all?
Yeah, I thought I distributed a copy to you. I do have a copy if you're interested, sure.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, no, we got it.
I think I'd be interested in seeing it.
Okay,
Right. And-
sure.
Numbers, guys.
Well, I would think most people would.
Mayor? You know, I would think that, you know, we should start there and see what their audit says and invite them into, I think they have some ideas how the financial condition got the way it was and how it deteriorated, and to hear their opinion on it, and then you know, go from there. But I think they have some good ideas what happened there, and they've been doing the audit for some years now, so I'd like to see them come in and give a report on what their opinion is too.
Mayor, I think that might be an excellent idea, because if there is this independent audit by Wormer Rogers, who does the city's audit, by the way, they're testing internal controls, they're testing their financial conditions, so I think it might be worthwhile.
I'll get that out to everybody.
Yes.
Okay. And ultimately, let's just cut to the chase, too. Being allowed to actually get the answers that we've been asking for since last November, frankly, when I took a lot of heat for crying that the emperor had no clothing, is going to lead to a partnership, which means money. Okay? And now the collective thud you're about to hear might be several hundred people hearing Councilman Hugg say this, but if we get the access, which in my opinion, for me, my vote includes the Inspector General, you know, we can start with an outside agency. I think it's good to go outside too. They just like ourselves, we have Wormer Rogers, but that's the contracted, if you will, in-house agency that goes from year to year. We're looking for fresh eyes, just to see a different angle. And I think since you brought forward Harrah's originally, Mayor, that they had approached you and you had approached them, you had talked. Now they seem to be going in your direction with a third party, correct?
Well, yeah, they voted they are going to go with a third party. They have
Right.
not identified who that's going to be.
I could even, go ahead. No, go ahead, go ahead.
Did they release RFQs for the third party?
They did.
Okay.
You know, and for the record, we offered to do this for them several months ago. Jim Hawk offered city staff to help. But yes, they have done it.
Okay, because I could even see myself, considering my position, it's never been about the Rialto's building. I always tell people, the Rialto's going nowhere. It's going to be just as beautiful and located at the same spot as it is now. It's about keeping the shows going and doing it in a professional manner. There was basically a business, a management, and a marketing formula that over 15 years showed us was an utter failure. Now to go in this fresh, brand new direction that a lot of us were supporting with a third party that presented that have histories, reconsider partnership at that point when we're looking at complete access with the and later says that mention this, and then that we go to a third party, a proven that now you're talking about a the dollars on $400,000 that maybe 105,000.
I think we had 49 shows booked.
Right.
And so, and you know, pointed out the investor in that. So I don't think it's unreasonable that what's happened that we're asking for. Asked for. I'm glad that we've stood our ground. And moving forward, you know, I told Mr. Vera, and again, I speak for the council, and maybe not everyone agrees with me, but I think they might, that the relationship has changed at this point. If we move forward with them, there's going to be a level of accountability that maybe hasn't happened in the past. And Councilman Mundrin, I pointed this out. I was the liaison when the whole sign fiasco happened. As liaison, there was no way for me to know that an employee was dealing with someone in Indiana buying a sign. It was never brought to me. It certainly would have come across anything that would have come to me that I could report it back to the council. And I believe it's the same thing with you as liaison with the taxes not being paid. It wasn't the type of information that would have ever been shared with you. So, you know, the liaison and the council basically sitting back and writing the blank check every year. I don't think moving forward, we're going to have that type of relationship. I'm not sure if everyone at the theater on their board is receptive to that, but I'm saying it publicly because I've said it privately. And again, if someone disagrees, please speak up, but otherwise, I think we need to make it clear, moving forward, we're going to have a different relationship with the theater if we continue to give the type of funding that we have in the past. Yes.
I think, obviously, the whole board of the Rialto has changed now with the manager being gone. Jim Smith has stepped down. There has been a new person appointed in his place. And the group that is there on the board are working very, very hard to keep the place open and to move ahead. And with that, as you had already mentioned, Mayor, that a manager didn't seem to be the way to go because there wasn't going to be enough support internally for a manager without hiring a third-party company that has everything in place to do this. Larry, they had hired a small firm to look through the books. As things got very heated, that gentleman said, no, I'm not interested in doing this. Our firm was, who's your father-in-law work with? The new name? Not new, but it's, so, right. So that was the firm that was attached to our vote. And then the Warmer Rogers said they were just too busy with everything else at the time, and they could not be. But they obviously have done the audits for some time, and I agree with whoever had said it. They may be the place to start with for us.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I think that going back to what you said, that first step of being the Rialto is now open and agreeable for us to look into the finances. I think that we could take these small steps to get to the bigger picture. I think and I have to, my hat is off to Mr. Darcy and Mr. Rolfe for their backing in this and looking at the Rialto as well and helping them out. So we may not get it all, the IG, Larry, right now, but if we have the audit and we can take a look at that and everything seems to be above board and open, we've got now some room for some negotiations and some talk. So if we take that small step first and looking at the financials, I think they've agreed to allowing that, and it satisfies us here that, let's start there. Let's start there. Let's move forward. It's going to take some time, and you're absolutely right, Mayor. The conditions have changed. Mindsets have changed now with the Rialto. And so they know that we're going to be holding people accountable. And so I just want to take that first step just to see how we can work this out. If we can get together on that first financial piece and look in that, and then they are bringing in an outside party, which it seems like, 220 shows or 200 shows to me. I'm already excited about that. But yeah, let's start. Let's start with the small step and see if we can get going and build a good relationship there.
Yes.
Jim, you sent us the draft audit back in April.
Yes.
Maybe you can get us the final audit. And has staff looked at this audit?
I think the finance director did. Yeah. The real looking at our own audit, it's the manager's letter in the first several pages that is really, as Councilman Turk said, their observations and recommendations to changes rather than the numbers, back in the rest of it.
And I guess my question is, I remember looking at this back in April as a draft. I guess my question is, if the front two pages repeatedly seemed as if the financial conditions were in solid state, and there evidently is evidence of shortfalls where we've had to step up, what's the next step?
I can't tell you that. The fiscal year is
You're
July
saying you looked at
1st.
the audit, it looked
So-
fine.
So the audit looked at it as a snapshot as of June 30th, 2015.
So maybe the right thing is a forensic audit? Is the mayor's suggestion? I guess what you're saying is, some are saying up here, we don't need someone to come in. They did the audit. We have the audit. It looks like everything's fine in the audit. So, I mean, right? I mean, to me, it's like circle talk. What are we gonna do?
Well, I think we have, Jim, you and Mr. Gadadi were there last week with Mr. Rolfe and Mr. Darcy. You have a pretty good financial picture of the Rialto right now.
Right.
And to be frank, it's not very good.
It's not good.
It's not good.
If I may.
Yep.
I mean, I think, and I haven't seen the final audit, I'd like to, but I'm sure that the final audit is going to suggest that there's a pretty dire financial picture over there at the Rialto. That's no secret. That's been going on for a long time. However, I think we've seen a shift in the mindset, which is very positive, which is the Rialto and the Rialto board is going to go in a different direction. The reason why, I would assume, the reason why they've been having some financial difficulties, or one of the reasons, as the mayor pointed out, last year they had 49 shows, where there are competitors in the area that are having 200. So that's one thing, I think, bringing in this third, which I'm very excited about, but bringing in a third-party manager is going to help. Going from 49 shows to 200 shows, I think could make an incredible difference to the Rialto. But there certainly isn't any argument that the Rialto is in bad financial shape. But one of the reasons is because they haven't been having any shows. I think they've let that general manager go, which is a good thing, and they're going in a new direction, as the mayor had indicated, with the third-party manager, which I applaud. I think it's a great idea. They need a new direction. It looks like they're trying to get there. So,
If I may.
Yes.
The mayor was at that meeting, as well as Pat Mudron, or Councilman Mudron, and myself at the last board meeting, and the whole demeanor of the board had changed. I mean, it was more of excitement of moving forward and welcoming new ideas. Finally, from what I could tell, have agreed to stop running it the same old way because it's not working. It's not working, and finally they want to all move forward, and they use that term over and over again. It's time to move forward, and we need everybody's help. And it just seemed different and kind of exciting, and so I was kind of pleased with the meeting that took place last week.
Mayor, if I may. And Councilwoman Quillman, thank you so much for letting us know how that last meeting went. But I think that, and it's a good piece, because I think that this council really afflicted the comfortable, if you understand what I'm saying. You know, we put our foot down and said, hey, this is what we want to see, this is where we want to be, and certainly, it certainly afflicted the comfortable. So now, I'm glad they're looking in a different direction and mindsets are changing. So this will be our first step too. You know, we need to get in there and work better with them and save this.
You know, as far as the, having an outside auditor come in and the inspector general, who, like their attorney, would be protecting our interests as the major investor, really, that's more to learn from history, I guess. You know, we're kind of looking behind. We are looking back at that moment, but if you don't learn from history, you're condemned to repeat it. The most important component here that excites me is the outside third-party management. Virtually, that will eliminate any payroll. That was the big issue. Payroll tax. That's all gone. This outside company will be having its own staff wherever they're located, up north, or in Iowa. I think one's one company. That's the most important thing, is having the outside company, because then we can look at a partnership that might have some financial involvement. But I'm not sure for what. When you're bringing in 200 shows, maybe a little bump up front to get them rolling. But when you're running 200 to 250 shows, you're going to be doing okay. They know what they're doing. They've done it before at a number of other theaters. So that is the critical piece, is complete outside third party to manage shows and production and programming.
Mr. Mayor, just
Sure.
Jim, you was going to speak with the County Executive Walsh about the assisting in the Rialto funding. Remember, I think it was a couple of weeks ago.
We have it on TV.
Yeah, okay. Did you ever get a chance to?
No, I haven't.
You haven't? Okay. All right, thank you.
Is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition, or conveyance pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Girl?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman McFarland?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Motion carried.
And on to.